I live in Burke County, North Carolina, in Morganton. I'm used to the quiet lifestyle that comes with living in a rural place. You get some weird characters here and there, but it's usually nothing too bad. I own a nice plot of land with my husband. My work schedule fluctuates sometimes. I work days, sometimes nights. This happened on a night that I was on my way home after a night shift, so it had to be around 3 a.m. My phone was almost dead. I was hungry, I was tired, and I just wanted to get some food and head home. I stopped at the gas station to get $10 worth of gas and also a package sandwich, which I proceeded to eat inside the gas station cafe. Some sketchy guy was eyeing me for a bit until he left the building without buying anything. After eating, I went outside to fill up the gas and then got back in the car. The smell of gas was extra pungent for some reason. These roads are very dark and twisty at night, so I was driving slow, especially since I was tired after a long day of work. Then something unexpected happened. The needle on the gas gauge suddenly dropped to E, and the low gas light came on and beeped. I had no idea what was going on. I'm not a car person, and I'd never run out of gas before. Plus, the needle just suddenly dropped. I thought at first that the computer was glitching, so I pulled over and restarted the car, but the needle was still on E. I tried to continue driving, but the engine died. I started having a panic attack. I called my husband first thing, and thank God he picked up. I asked him how my car could run out of gas after I just filled up. As I got out of the car, I smelled gasoline. I told him this, and he said it sounded like I had a leak. He told me he'd head right over and call our roadside assistance company. But then I heard a car coming with no headlights, and suddenly it stopped not far behind my car. I suddenly thought of that sketchy guy who was watching me at the gas station and asked my husband if there was a chance he did something to my car. My husband's tone suddenly changed to sounding more concerned and worried. He said yes, there's a chance that he may have cut my fuel line. I didn't know what that meant, but all I knew was I needed to run. I took my keys out of the ignition, shut the door, and locked it so that the headlights would turn off. My phone was on like 2%, so I told him to text me when he was close. I ran off the road and towards the first house I could find. I ran down the long driveway and up the property to the front door. All the lights in the house were off, but I still rang the bell multiple times anyway. Eventually, a light turned on, and then the door opened. A man in his 60s opened the door. He looked like he had just been woken up. I asked him to let me in to hide and charge my phone. After a bit of explaining, he opened the door fully and let me in. I asked him for an iPhone charger, and he said he'd go look for one, then asked me to take a seat in the living room. I sat down, still in my nurse scrubs, feeling a mix of emotions. The man called out from the kitchen, asking if I wanted some water. I said yes, please. Little did he know I saw his reflection in a mirror in the living room that gave visibility into the kitchen. I saw him fill a cup with water, and I know for a fact I saw him drop something into the water. He walked out of view of the mirror, but the faucet was still running. It ran for a solid 30 more seconds before he turned it off. He came back into the living room with a glass of water and handed it to me. I thanked him, and he sat down and just looked at me, then asked me to explain the situation again. I replied that I just really needed a charger so that I could contact my husband. He said all right and went upstairs. I checked my phone and it was on 1%. I used that remaining battery to send my current location to my husband, just in case. I then smelled the glass of water, and although it didn't smell like anything, I knew he put something in it. Now I had to make the decision of whether I should leave or not. On one hand, I needed to charge my phone badly. On the other, I was 99% sure he did something to this water. I heard him walking back down the stairs, and he said he didn't have any iPhone chargers since he had an Android. After he said this, I got up and walked straight for the door. I'm not an idiot. Once outside, I ran back down the driveway to the road. I felt like throwing up. I couldn't believe 2 separate potential incidents from 2 different men happened in one night. I crept along the side of the road behind the trees. I took out my phone and sent my updated location, and right around then, my battery died. I waited until I saw the familiar headlights of my husband's truck. I went out waving my arms, and thank God it was him. I got inside the truck and let all my emotions out, crying to him about what I just went through. He brought us to my car, and there was no longer a car behind mine. My back window was shattered, though, and it appeared someone had gotten into the back seat, but nothing of high value was left in my car to steal anyway. My car battery was also now dead. When I told my husband about the man who tried to potentially harm me, he was so furious he wanted to go break down his door. But I told him no, let's just wait for the tow truck to come. We waited quite a while before it came. My car was towed to my dealership, where they would take the car in the next day. My husband was right. My car was vandalized, and the fuel line was cut completely. Thank God I was off the next few days because I needed some time to mentally recover from this night. The idea that twice in one night I was almost a victim of some sketchy men, I just couldn't get over it. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe the channel for future videos, and like and share with your friends. Back in 2005, when I was just 18, I was living in Uvalde, Texas. It was a low-income neighborhood, the kind you find scattered all over rural Texas, far from the city lights. The closest city to me was San Antonio, about an hour and a half away. I was attending a local community college because that's all my parents could afford. One of my best friends from high school, Andrew, had moved to San Antonio to go to San Antonio College. He lived in a small apartment just outside the city with a roommate, and his girlfriend often stayed over. Since it wasn't too far, I'd visit him all the time. One weekend, Andrew invited me to crash at his place for the night. I took my trusty old 1995 Toyota pickup truck. Well, trusty might be a stretch. The thing was a piece of crap. The gas gauge didn't even work, so I had to keep track of when I last filled the tank and reset the trip mileage. I hit the road around 3 p.m. on a Friday, taking Route 90, which was a straight shot from Uvalde to San Antonio. There was no traffic at all, and I got to Andrew's place at a reasonable time. His girlfriend wasn't due until the next day, so we planned to go out that night. We stopped at a liquor store, then drank in his apartment for a while with his roommate. Later, the three of us headed to a dive bar that turned a blind eye to fake IDs. That was pretty much our night. We got back to his apartment around 2 a.m., grabbed some food, and I crashed on the couch. The next day was supposed to be more of the same, but Andrew and his girlfriend were having issues. As they got drunker, she started yelling at him in front of me. It got really awkward and uncomfortable. I didn't drink much that day because I was already unsure about staying the night with her there. Eventually, I decided to head back home. I said goodbye to everyone and started my journey. It was very late at night, probably around midnight. Route 90 was deserted, so I was flying for my pickup standards. But suddenly, the engine started sputtering. My heart dropped as I realized I had forgotten to fill up the tank. I slowed down, but it was too late. The engine cut out. I pulled over to the side of the road and tried starting it a few times, but it was no use. I took out my cell phone, which was just as unreliable as my truck, and tried to get a signal. No luck. I couldn't even call for help. All I could do was turn on my hazards and hope a good Samaritan would pass by. You wouldn't believe how long I sat there before I saw headlights. I waved my arms as the car approached, but it zoomed past me, ignoring me. This happened again after another 10 minutes. I was starting to feel hopeless, like maybe I should just sleep in my car and wait until sunrise to get help. So that's what I decided to do. I got inside my car, took the key out of the ignition to save the battery, and angled my seat back to sleep. I could hear the occasional car zooming past, but it didn't feel worth waving people down in the dark. It seemed sketchy for both me and the people in the cars. But just as I was starting to drift off, a car door closing from behind me woke me up. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a car pulled up behind me, headlights off. I turned around to get a better look. It was a big pickup truck, but I couldn't see anyone inside or outside of it. Maybe someone had pulled over to help. I got out of the car and called out, "Excuse me." No response. I walked closer to the truck to confirm no one was inside, then walked back to my car. This was weird. I looked towards the trees on the side of the road, thinking maybe someone was relieving themselves in the woods. I went back inside my car and locked the door. This was just too strange. Suddenly, there was a tap on my window. I jumped. I looked up to see a man looking down at me, smiling. He said, "Hey buddy, need a hand?" I lowered the window a crack and said, "Hey, I ran out of gas." The man said, "That's quite the predicament. Step out and give me a hand with this real quick." I thought he meant he had a gas jug to fill up my tank, so I stepped out of the truck and shut the door, expecting him to lead me to his truck. But he stood there, looking down at me because he was much taller, still smiling, and said, "I need you to empty your pockets, please." Took me a second to process what he meant. I was a broke college student driving a piece of crap pickup truck. I wasn't about to get robbed of the only cash I had and my phone. I ran for it, heading towards the trees. I'm small but fast. I turned around and saw he was chasing after me. Once I made it into the trees, I zigzagged all over the place until I seemed to lose him. Then I crouched behind a big tree to catch my breath. I heard him approaching closer. I quieted my breath as I heard him say out loud, "I'll kill you, you piece of..." I don't know if he was just saying it out of anger or if he wanted me to hear it, but I was too scared to move even after I heard his footsteps move away. I didn't move. In fact, I stayed in that position the rest of the night, eventually lying down behind the big tree until dawn. When I finally went back to the highway, my truck was still there, but the truck behind me was gone. My truck's doors were both open, and I found that my glove box had been gone through and completely emptied of anything somewhat valuable. My flannel hoodie was also taken, which had something in the pocket. I finally managed to wave down a good Samaritan who gave me a ride to the closest gas station. I bought a fuel can, filled it with gas, and the man brought me back to my car. I filled my tank just enough to drive the truck to a gas station to fill up completely. Then I went straight home. This was a real-life learning experience for me. There are bad people out there who will try to take advantage of you when you're in a vulnerable spot. But there are also good people like the man who helped me. When I was 18, I was pretty immature and naive. I was kind of a jerk on the road, honking whenever I got impatient, even cutting people off. Looking back, it was really stupid. If I ever have kids, I'll be a lot stricter with them about their driving. But back then, I drove a lot for someone my age. I went to school 5 hours away from home. No matter what day of the week, traffic always got terrible the closer I got to home. So during breaks, I drive home at night to avoid it. Cut my trip from a 4 to 5 hour drive down to 3 hours. It was the beginning of winter break. The fall semester had just ended, and all my friends left for home on the same day. I waited until later in the night to head out because I hate traffic more than anything. I used to drive a Mazda 3 that I'd beat the ever-living crap out of. I was known for driving my car to a near-empty tank. People would comment on it whenever they were in the car with me. I'd always assure them that the car would still have at least 30 miles to go even after the needle hit E. I found out the hard way that night that I was wrong. I was only about an hour into my drive on the interstate when the needle hit E. I was pushing my luck, waiting for a gas station sign instead of looking up the nearest one on the map. The car started making weird sounds and jolting. That's when I realized I might have actually run the tank empty this time. I got off the first exit ramp, hoping it would lead right to a gas station. But this exit was dark, with no streetlights and woods on either side. I was scared to slow down and lose my speed because I didn't know if I'd have enough gas to find a gas station. I blew through the stop sign at the end of the ramp and made a sharp left turn onto the intersecting road. It was another dark road surrounded by woods. I was screwed. The car eventually came to a stop and the engine died. Things only got worse when I took out my phone and saw I had no bars. I have T-Mobile, which is the worst possible reception anywhere far from a major city. I tried calling 911 because I was stupid enough to think that 911 works even without reception. Of course, it didn't. I was terrified because I didn't know what to do. I turned on my hazard lights and just waited for someone to pass by. It was a long time before I saw headlights approaching. When they did, I flashed my headlights at them. They passed me, made a U-turn, and pulled up on the grass behind me. But I didn't know who was getting out of that car, and I was an 18-year-old defenseless girl. I just cracked the window down a little bit as this man approached my car. I told him I needed help. I had run out of gas. He offered to give me a ride to the nearest gas station. He was a bald guy with glasses on and kind of looked trustworthy. I had no other options, so I accepted his offer. I got out of the car, making sure to lock my doors first. His car was a black Honda, probably from 2010. It smelled funky inside, but I couldn't pin down what the smell was. He made another U-turn and started driving in the direction he had been going before. He made small talk, asking where I was from and basic questions. I was honest with him, telling him I was driving home from school. He said he lived in the area and that they don't get too many out-of-towners getting off the interstate for this quiet little town. The route we were taking lacked any buildings. It was just woods everywhere. I asked if he knew of any gas stations, and he said yeah, just a ways up the road. I started hearing bumping and thumping coming from the back of the vehicle. At first, I thought it was maybe just bumps in the road or a loose object in the trunk. He seemed to keep talking and talking like he wouldn't stop. Finally, we got to a sort of town-looking area. There were some lights and buildings at last, a diner and a few small houses. There was a red light at the first intersection. Since I got in his car, we came to a stop, and for the first time, there was silence. And then I heard the unmistakable sound of someone screaming in the trunk, followed by thumps and bangs. I looked at the man, who looked at me in a split second. I unbuckled my seatbelt, opened the door, and ran. At the same time, he tried grabbing me and pulling me back into the car. I heard him get out, but instead of chasing me, he ran to close his passenger side door, then floored it down the street. I ran into the diner and asked for help, making a scene. I used their phone to call 911. I waited there, and it became this whole huge thing with multiple police showing up to take a report. Given the gravity of the report, that I had heard someone in the trunk of the car, they had to get every last detail from me about the man's car, his appearance, and where he picked me up. The police also gave me a ride back to my car so that they could include the pickup location in the report. They helped me get in touch with AAA, which eventually came to my location to fill my car with gas. This was, hands down, the scariest experience of my life. I was shaken to the core for the rest of the ride home. I hope they found that man. I hope whoever was in that trunk is still alive today. For all I know, that man could have been bringing me to his house or somewhere else, and I was just lucky I had a chance to get out at that red light.